While humanity conquered the stars, every advanced alien race in the galaxy spent centuries trying to unlock the secrets of time travel. None succeeded. Except for humans. The arrogant Mazarians came closest. Their prototype time machine, the brainchild of top scientist Karos, failed spectacularly. Dangerous temporal anomalies ripped through space-time. Disasters struck Mazarian worlds. On Earth, eccentric physicist Edward Kennedy had been secretly working on time travel for years. Experiments no one else dared attempt. Calculations so complex they broke supercomputers. Until finally, his unorthodox brilliance cracked the code. A revolutionary breakthrough. But someone on his team talked. Soon aliens across the galaxy buzzed about the human who solved time travel. When Karos heard, he seethed with envy and greed. The human discovery could perfect the Mazarian time machine. He vowed to seize Kennedy's secrets by any means necessary. Mazarian spies assaulted Kennedy's lab in a brutal midnight raid. But the crafty physicist saw it coming. He rigged his lab to explode, destroying all research and prototypes. Kennedy vanished in the chaos, the sole keeper of stable time travel. Enraged beyond measure, Karos mobilized the mighty Mazarian armada to invade Earth and capture Kennedy at any cost. Humanity's defenses paled in comparison. Defeat seemed inevitable. In a hidden bunker, Earth's generals met with Kennedy. The scientists proposed an audacious plan: infiltrate the Mazarian mothership, steal their failed time machine, and use Kennedy's knowledge to make it work, giving Earth a technological edge to survive. Now, as Mazarian warships darken Earth's skies and humanity faces enslavement under alien overlords, Kennedy and an elite covert team must pull off the most daring heist of all time. They have one chance to board the Mazarian flagship, swipe the time machine, and alter the course of history itself. The fate of Earth and the future of the galaxy all hinge on this one desperate mission. Failure means the end of human freedom. Kennedy and his team moved swiftly through the bowels of the Mazarian mothership, hearts pounding with anticipation. The smell of recycled air and alien metal filled their nostrils as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. "Jack, you're with me," Kennedy whispered. "We're going after the time machine. Sullivan, take the rest of the team and raise some hell. Buy us as much time as you can." Sullivan nodded grimly. "We'll give them a show they won't forget." The team split up, each focused on their critical objectives. Kennedy and Jack, guided by stolen schematics, wound their way deeper into the ship. The hum of alien machinery grew louder with each step. They rounded a corner and froze. Ahead lay the lab housing the prototype time machine, but a squad of heavily armed Mazarian guards blocked their path. The alien soldiers chittered in their native tongue, weapons at the ready. "I'll handle this," Jack muttered. His fingers flew over his wrist computer, hacking into the ship's systems with deft precision. The lab door hissed open, alarms suddenly silenced. The guards whirled around in confusion, and Kennedy and Jack seized their chance. They slipped past and darted inside, the door slamming shut behind them. And there it was, the Mazarian time machine, a sleek, intricate device thrumming with barely contained energy. Kennedy approached it reverently, his mind already racing with the calculations needed to make it functional. "Cover me," he told Jack, setting to work with single-minded focus. He tore open panels, rerouting circuits and integrating his own knowledge into the alien tech. Elsewhere, Sullivan's team moved from one strategic point to another, planting explosives with practiced efficiency. The charges set, they took up defensive positions, ready for the inevitable response. It came swiftly. Alarms blared as Mazarian security forces converged on their location, plasma fire filling the corridors. The commandos returned fire, the air thick with the stench of ozone and burnt metal. "Kennedy, whatever you're doing, hurry the hell up!" Sullivan shouted into his comm, ducking as a plasma bolt sizzled past his head. In the lab, Kennedy worked frantically, sweat beading his brow. Jack stood tensely by the door, rifle trained on the entrance. The sounds of distant battle echoed through the ship. Almost there, Kennedy muttered. Just a few more calibrations. Suddenly, the door shuddered under a heavy impact. Then another. The Mazarians had found them. "Kennedy!" Jack yelled, his voice edged with desperation. Kennedy made his final adjustment and slammed the activation switch. The time machine pulsed with blinding white light, a low thrum building to a deafening crescendo. The lab door burst open, and Caro stormed in, flanked by a platoon of elite soldiers. But they were too late. In a flash of searing radiance, Kennedy and the time machine vanished, leaving only a scorched crater behind. At that same instant, Sullivan's team detonated their charges. Explosions ripped through the mothership, sending gouts of flame and debris spiraling into the void. Klaxons wailed as the mighty vessel shuddered under the onslaught. On Earth, Rebel Command watched their sensor feeds with breathless expectation. A tense silence filled the room. Then, a shimmering portal flared to life, and Kennedy tumbled through, the stolen time machine cradled in his arms. Cheers erupted as he staggered to his feet, a grin splitting his exhausted face. "We did it!" he rasped. "We have the time machine, and I've jumped us ahead 2 days. We have a window to study this tech, to even the odds." The rebels wasted no time. Scientists swarmed over the Mazarian device, reverse engineering its secrets with fevered intensity. Bit by bit, they unraveled its mysteries, uncovering a fatal flaw in the enemy's shield technology. Earth's fighters were outfitted with this new knowledge, their hulls gleaming with jury-rigged alien weaponry, the resistance prepared for its final stand. But Karos had not been idle. Enraged by the theft of his prize, he ordered the full might of the Mazarian war machine to descend on Earth. Thousands of ships poured into the planet's orbit, blackening the sky with their sinister silhouettes. Faced with this overwhelming force, Kennedy made a fateful decision. Armed with the time machine and a desperate plan, he volunteered for one last mission, one that could change the course of the war. He would go back to the moment of the heist, using the chaos to plant a virus deep inside the mothership, a virus set to activate at the crucial moment of the final battle. With a flash of light, he vanished into the time stream, reappearing in the heart of the enemy stronghold. Pulse pounding, he evaded patrols and security systems, making his way to a critical data node. There, he uploaded the virus, a malicious code that would bring the Mazarian fleet to its knees. His task complete, Kennedy activated the time machine once more, jumping back to the raging battle in Earth's skies. The mothership loomed above the carnage, its weapons raining devastation upon the rebel forces. But as Kennedy materialized, the virus came to life. Across the Mazarian fleet, systems failed and shields flickered out of existence. The invaders were suddenly vulnerable, their technological advantage stripped away in an instant. Earth's fighters seized the opportunity, concentrating their fire on the crippled Mazarian ships. Explosions blossomed like fiery flowers as the enemy vessels crumpled under the onslaught. On the mothership's bridge, Karos watched his fleet fall into disarray, realization dawning on his features. He knew the treachery that had occurred, the virus that had undone him, but he would not go quietly. With cold, calculating precision, he focused his remaining firepower on a single target, the rebel base housing the time machine and Earth's hopes for victory. If he could not have the device, he would ensure that no one else could either. The base's defenses, unprepared for the concentrated barrage, crumbled like sand before the tide. Kennedy could only watch in horror as the complex was consumed by roaring flames, the time machine lost in the inferno. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Kennedy's eyes hardened with tenacity. The battle was not yet over. Earth still had one last bold strategy to play. The base shuddered as another Mazarian blast struck home. Alarms blared and smoke filled the air. Kennedy sprinted through the chaos, dodging falling debris. He had one shot left. The time machine sat in its reinforced chamber, humming with latent energy. Kennedy slammed the door behind him and rushed to the control panel. His fingers flew over the keys, inputting coordinates for the crucial moment before the Mazarian fleet's arrival. A deafening explosion rocked the chamber, cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling. Kennedy punched the activation button. The machine whirred to life, enveloping him in a cocoon of shimmering energy. He vanished in a flash of light just as the roof caved in. Disorientation hit Kennedy like a wave as he rematerialized. He stumbled, catching himself on a nearby console. The Rebel Command Center bustled with activity, oblivious to the impending attack. "General Harris!" Kennedy shouted, rushing to the startled commander. "We need to evacuate immediately. The Mazarians are coming." Harris gaped at him. "Kennedy, how did you—" "No time," Kennedy cut him off. "Trust me. We have minutes before their fleet arrives, but I have a plan." Kennedy laid out his strategy rapid fire, detailing the deployment of their reverse-engineered defenses. Harris barked orders, mobilizing teams to position the cloaked mines and gravity disruptors in a net around Earth. They worked feverishly, racing against the clock. Kennedy's hands shook as he made final adjustments to the disruptor grid. A ping from the long-range sensors made his blood run cold. "Mazarian signatures detected," a technician called out. "ETA 3 minutes. Kennedy took a deep breath. This was it. Their one chance to change the future. The Mazarian fleet dropped out of FTL, weapons primed. But as they moved to attack formation, chaos erupted. Ships veered wildly off course, caught in the web of gravity distortions. Others vanished in brilliant explosions as they triggered the hidden mines. "Now!" Kennedy shouted. Resistance fighters poured from concealed hangars, their ships dripping with stolen Mazarian tech. They swarmed the disoriented alien vessels, targeting engines and weapons systems with surgical precision. Kennedy watched the battle unfold on the command center's main screen, his heart pounding. They were winning, but he knew it wasn't over yet. Kairos was too clever to go down without a fight. Sure enough, the remaining Mazarian ships began to regroup. Kennedy saw his window of opportunity closing. He turned to his hand-picked strike team. "It's time," he said grimly. "We're going after Kairos." They crowded around the time machine. Kennedy input the coordinates for Kairos's flagship. Energy crackled around them as they made the jump. They materialized in a corridor, alarms blaring. Mazarian guards opened fire. Kennedy and his team dove for cover, returning fire with their enhanced weapons. They fought their way through the ship, inching closer to the bridge. Finally, they reached the command center. Kennedy burst through the doors, weapon raised. And there he was, Kairos, the alien mastermind behind it all. "It's over, Kairos," Kennedy said, his voice steady despite his racing pulse. "Your fleet is in ruins. Earth stands united against you." Kairos snarled, but Kennedy could see the calculating look in his eyes. "This war will destroy us both if we let it continue," Kennedy pressed on. "But it doesn't have to end this way. I'm offering you a choice, peace, and a chance to unlock the secrets of time itself." For a long moment, the only sound was the distant rumble of battle. Then, slowly, Kairos lowered his weapon. "Perhaps," the alien leader said grudgingly, "there is wisdom in your words, human." As the ceasefire was called and the Mazarian fleet began its withdrawal, Kennedy felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had done it. Earth was safe. But as he looked out at the stars, a chill ran down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was just the beginning of a much larger struggle. Kennedy stood at the viewport of Kronos Station, gazing out at the vast expanse of space. The alliance with the Mazarians had borne fruit beyond his wildest expectations. In the years since that fateful battle, humans and aliens had worked side by side, pushing the boundaries of temporal science. The station hummed with activity as researchers from both species scurried about. Kennedy watched a massive vessel emerge from a shimmering time vortex, its hull gleaming with alien alloys. They'd done it. Stable, long-range jumps were now possible. "Impressive, isn't it?" Kairos's gravelly voice came from behind him. Kennedy turned to face his Mazarian counterpart. "More than I ever dreamed. But we need to be careful with this power." Kairos waved a dismissive tentacle. "Careful? Think of the possibilities. We could reshape history itself." "That's exactly what worries me," Kennedy replied. Their debate was cut short by a sudden tremor that shook the station. Alarms blared as they sprinted to the main lab. "What's happening?" Kennedy shouted over the din. A human technician looked up from her console, face pale. "The experimental vortex generator. It's overloading." Before their eyes, a swirling portal tore open in the center of the lab. Through it, they glimpsed a primordial Earth, oceans roiling with the first sparks of life. "Shut it down," Kennedy ordered, lunging for the controls. But Karos was faster. The Mazarian's eyes gleamed with fanatical purpose as he shoved Kennedy aside. At last, the power to ensure Mazarian supremacy. Kennedy staggered back as Mazarian soldiers poured into the lab, weapons raised. Karos barked orders in his native tongue, and the aliens moved to secure the vortex generator. "What are you doing?" Kennedy demanded. "You'll contaminate the timeline." Karos sneered. "I'm securing our rightful place in history. Mazarian DNA will seed your world, and we will rise as the dominant species." Horror dawned on Kennedy as he realized the full scope of Karos's plan. If successful, it would mean the extinction of humanity before it even began. He had to act fast. As Karos turned to initiate the launch of temporal probes, Kennedy made his move. He dove for an emergency panel, slamming his palm on the lockdown button. Blast doors slammed shut, sealing off sections of the station. In the confusion, Kennedy slipped away, his mind racing. He had to warn Earth, had to find a way to stop this madness. But first, he needed to escape. Kennedy sprinted through the corridors of Kronos Station, the sound of Mazarian pursuit echoing behind him. Time itself hung in the balance, and he was the only one who could set things right. Kennedy's fingers flew across the escape pod's controls, his heart pounding as he initiated the launch sequence. The pod shuddered, breaking free from Kronos Station's docking clamps. He glanced back at the rapidly shrinking station, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. Alarms blared. Kennedy's eyes darted to the radar display. 3 Mazarian fighters streaked toward him, weapons hot. The pod bucked as energy blasts slammed into its hull. Sparks erupted from a nearby console. Come on," Kennedy muttered, pushing the engines to their limits. Earth loomed ahead, a blue-green sanctuary. Another hit rocked the pod. Warning lights flashed across the instrument panel. The ship groaned, systems failing. Kennedy gritted his teeth as he entered the atmosphere, the pod shaking violently. Fire licked at the viewports. Controls went dark. He wrestled with the manual override, fighting for any semblance of control as the ground rushed up to meet him. The impact drove the air from Kennedy's lungs. Sand sprayed as the pod carved a deep furrow across the Sahara dunes. When it finally ground to a halt, silence fell. Kennedy's vision swam. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead. With trembling hands, he reached for the distress beacon. His fingers found the switch, activating it just before darkness claimed him. Miles away, in a hidden resistance base, an alert chimed. Captain Mike Sullivan snapped to attention, scanning the incoming transmission. His eyes widened. "Kennedy," he breathed. He turned to his team. "Gear up. We've got an emergency extraction." As Sullivan's team scrambled to board their stealth aircraft, a Mazarian dropship pierced the atmosphere, heading for the crash site. Karos himself oversaw the operation from orbit, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Find Kennedy," he snarled to his commando leader. "Silence him permanently." The race was on. Sullivan's aircraft streaked across the desert as the Mazarian dropship touched down near Kennedy's pod. Alien boots crunched on sand as the commandos fanned out, weapons at the ready. Inside the battered pod, Kennedy stirred. Pain lanced through his body. He blinked, trying to focus. The sound of weapons fire snapped him to full alertness. He peered out the cracked viewport, seeing flashes of energy weapons and hearing the staccato of human gunfire. Sullivan's team had arrived, engaging the Mazarians in a brutal firefight. Plasma bolts sizzled past human heads as they took cover behind dunes. Return fire dropped 2 Mazarian soldiers, their bodies falling with dull thuds. Kennedy stumbled from the pod, his legs barely supporting him. Sullivan! He called out hoarsely. The captain turned, spotting Kennedy. Cover me! He shouted to his team, sprinting toward the scientist. Kennedy staggered forward. Karos! He gasped. He's going to... A Mazarian energy blast struck Kennedy in the side. He cried out, collapsing into Sullivan's arms. Man down! Sullivan bellowed. He scooped up Kennedy, racing back to their aircraft as his team laid down suppressing fire. We're leaving! Now! They piled into the aircraft, bullets pinging off its armored hull. The engines roared to life, kicking up a sandstorm as they lifted off. Mazarian fighters screamed overhead, but it was too late. Sullivan's craft cloaked, vanishing from sight as it sped toward the resistance base. In the cargo hold, Sullivan worked feverishly to stabilize Kennedy. The scientist's eyes fluttered open. Karos, he whispered. Time vortex. Earth's past. Save your strength, Sullivan urged, prepping a medical pod. At the base, a team of scientists waited anxiously. As soon as the aircraft touched down, they rushed Kennedy to the medical bay. Sullivan watched as they placed him in an advanced healing chamber, the scientist's life signs wavering dangerously. Come on, Kennedy, Sullivan muttered. We need you to pull through. What the hell did you find out there? Hours ticked by. Finally, Kennedy stabilized. The lead scientist approached Sullivan, her face grave. Captain, we've managed to upload his memories to the simulation, but you need to see this for yourself. Sullivan followed her to the hollow chamber. The scientist activated the program, and Kennedy's fractured memories coalesced into a chilling vision. Images flashed by, Karos at the controls of a massive time vortex, Mazarian DNA being injected into Earth's primordial oceans, the timeline warping and shifting. Sullivan's blood ran cold as the full implications became clear. He turned to his team, steel in his eyes. We've got work to do, he said grimly. Gather every resource we have left. We're taking the fight to Kronos Station. Sullivan's team crouched behind makeshift barricades, plasma bolts sizzling overhead. The acrid smell of ozone filled the air as they returned fire, their weapons reports echoing through Kronos Station's corridors. Push forward, Sullivan shouted, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. We can't let Karos reach that generator. As if in response, a fresh wave of Mazarian soldiers poured from a nearby bulkhead. Their chitinous armor gleamed under the harsh station lights as they advanced, energy weapons spitting death. In the Resistance base's medical bay, Kennedy's eyes snapped open. He gasped, struggling to sit up despite the stabbing pain in his side. A nurse tried to ease him back down, but Kennedy waved her off. Get me a comm link, he rasped. Now! Moments later, Kennedy's fingers flew across a holographic interface. His face, pale and drawn, reflected in the screen's glow. Sullivan, do you read me? Bit busy here, Kennedy. Sullivan's voice crackled through the link, punctuated by weapons fire. Listen carefully, Kennedy said, his eyes darting across schematics of the station. There's a maintenance access point 3 meters to your left. It'll bypass the main defenses. Sullivan signaled his team. They fell back, laying down covering fire as they retreated to the access point. Private Chen, the team's tech specialist, pried open the panel. They squeezed inside just as another volley of Mazarian fire scorched the deck where they'd been standing. The team crawled through cramped conduits, the station's hum vibrating through the metal around them. Sweat beaded on Sullivan's forehead as he led the way, guided by Kennedy's instructions. Wait, Kennedy's voice rang out, and stop here! Sullivan peered through a grate. His breath caught as he saw the time vortex chamber below. Karos stood at a central console, his tentacles manipulating controls as a swirling portal of temporal energy pulsed before him. We're outnumbered, Sullivan whispered, noting the dozen Mazarian guards surrounding Karos. Any bright ideas, Kennedy? Working on it, Kennedy replied. His fingers danced across the interface. Okay, I'm going to drop the chamber's force fields. That should give you an opening. On my mark, now. The force fields flickered and died. Sullivan's team burst from the conduit, catching the Mazarians off guard. They opened fire, downing 3 aliens before the rest could react. Chaos erupted. Kairos bellowed orders as his guards returned fire. Sullivan's team sought cover behind equipment banks, trading shots with the Mazarians. Kennedy's voice rang out in Sullivan's ear. "The vortex controls. You have to shut them down." Sullivan nodded to Private Chen. "Make it happen." Chen sprinted toward the console, ducking energy blasts. He reached it, fingers flying across the alien controls. A stray shot from one of Kairos's probes struck the vortex generator. The air crackled with uncontrolled temporal energy. Kairos screamed as a wave of distorted time washed over him. His body seemed to age and de-age in rapid succession, tentacles withering and regenerating. With a final desperate effort, he slammed a control, launching a probe into the vortex before collapsing. "It's done!" Chen shouted. "Vortex is shutting down!" The swirling portal collapsed in on itself, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Sullivan's team secured the chamber, binding the surviving Mazarians. "Kennedy, we did it," Sullivan reported, relief evident in his voice. "The vortex is closed." But Kennedy's reply chilled him to the bone. "It's not over. That probe Kairos launched, it's going to change everything. Earth's entire evolutionary history will be rewritten." Sullivan's mind reeled. There has to be a way to stop it. "There is," Kennedy said softly, "but only one." Before Sullivan could respond, alarms blared. A new vortex sprang to life in the chamber. Sullivan watched in horror as Kennedy himself materialized, stumbling from the portal. "Kennedy, what are you doing?" Sullivan shouted. Kennedy's eyes met his, filled with a mix of fear and drive. "What has to be done?" With that, he turned and leaped into the vortex, vanishing in a flash of temporal energy. The portal collapsed behind him, leaving Sullivan and his team staring in disbelief at the empty space where their friend had been. The time vortex churned and pulsed, its swirling energies enveloping Edward Kennedy. In an instant, he felt his body dissolve, his consciousness scattering across billions of years. He plunged into Earth's primordial ocean, his very essence merging with the warm, nutrient-rich waters. Kennedy's mind reeled as he adjusted to this new form of existence. He was everywhere and nowhere, a quantum pattern dancing through the building blocks of life. The ocean around him teemed with microscopic activity, the first stirrings of Earth's biosphere. Focusing his thoughts, Kennedy projected his awareness through time and space. He sensed echoes of his future self, guiding him toward his target. The alien probe lurked somewhere in this vast primeval sea, its Mazarian technology already beginning to corrupt the delicate balance of emerging life. Kennedy stretched his consciousness, sifting through countless molecules and nascent organisms. Time compressed and expanded around him as he searched. Millennia passed in the blink of an eye, yet each moment felt like an eternity. Finally, he detected it, a subtle wrongness in the genetic code of a primitive microorganism. The Mazarian probe had begun its insidious work, inserting alien sequences into Earth's evolutionary blueprint. Kennedy's quantum essence surged with purpose. He focused his energy, remembering countless hours of research and theoretical models. With practiced precision, he initiated a series of targeted mutations, carefully excising the alien influence from the compromised DNA. The process was grueling. Kennedy worked tirelessly, moving from one lineage to the next. He rewrote genetic code, nudged molecular structures, and guided the course of mutations. All the while, he fought against the creeping exhaustion that threatened to unravel his quantum pattern. Eons passed. Kennedy watched as single-celled organisms gave way to more complex forms of life. With each new stage of evolution, he scanned for traces of Mazarian interference, meticulously undoing Kairos's sabotage. As the first multicellular organisms began to emerge, Kennedy felt a surge of relief. His efforts had succeeded. Earth's evolutionary path remained unsullied by alien influence. The future of humanity was secure. With his mission complete, Kennedy felt his energy waning. His quantum pattern began to dissipate, merging back into the fabric of space-time. In his final moments of awareness, he experienced a profound sense of peace, knowing his sacrifice had preserved the natural course of life on Earth. Back aboard Kronos Station, Captain Sullivan stared at the readouts in disbelief. The time vortex had stabilized, and scans showed no signs of temporal incursions. Kennedy's audacious attempt had worked. "We did it," Sullivan breathed, his voice barely audible over the hum of failing systems. Dr. Chen approached, her face grim. "Captain, we have a problem. The station's core is destabilizing. Kennedy's jump caused more damage than we thought." Sullivan's eyes hardened as he examined the data. "How long?" "Hours at most," Chen replied. "If we don't evacuate now, the core will implode. The resulting temporal shockwave could tear apart the fabric of space-time itself." Sullivan nodded, his eyes sweeping across the battered control room. "Sound the evacuation alarm. We're abandoning Kronos Station." As klaxons blared and crew members rushed to escape pods, Sullivan felt a pang of loss. This station had been humanity's greatest achievement, a beacon of hope and scientific progress. Now it would be their tomb. "Captain," a young scientist called out, hunched over a console. "I'm picking up an anomalous reading from the vortex logs. I've never seen anything like it." Sullivan hurried over, studying the strange energy signature on the screen. A chill ran down his spine as he considered the implications. What unforeseen consequences had Kennedy's actions set in motion? "We need to go," Sullivan said, pulling the scientist away from the console. "There's nothing more we can do here." As they made their way to the last escape pod, Sullivan cast a final glance at the flickering lights and sparking consoles of Kronos Station. The core's ominous rumble grew louder, a countdown to oblivion. Sullivan ushered his people into the pod, his mind racing with possibilities. Kennedy's sacrifice had saved them all, but at what cost? As the pod detached from the dying station, Sullivan couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was nowhere near the end. The escape pod hurtled through space, leaving behind the dying remnants of Kronos Station. Sullivan's eyes remained fixed on the screen, watching as the station imploded in a brilliant flash of light. The temporal shockwave rocked their small craft, but the reinforced hull held firm. Days turned to weeks, then months, as the survivors of the resistance regrouped. They established a new base on a distant planetoid, integrating salvaged technology from Kronos into their systems. Sullivan stood before a holographic display, studying the latest data on Kennedy's intervention. "Captain," Dr. Chen called out, her voice tinged with concern. "You need to see this." Sullivan moved to her station, peering at the readouts. His brow furrowed as he processed the information. "That can't be right. Run the analysis again." Chen shook her head. "I've run it 17 times, sir. The results are consistent. The energy signature we detected, it's growing." Sullivan's mind raced as he considered the implications. Kennedy's quantum imprint, scattered across billions of years, had left an indelible mark on the fabric of reality itself. What they once thought was their salvation now threatened to unravel existence. Months passed as they studied the phenomenon. Sullivan paced the command center, surrounded by holographic projections of space-time distortions. Scientists and temporal experts argued, their voices rising in frustration. "Enough!" Sullivan's voice cut through the chaos. "We can't sit here debating while reality crumbles around us. We need a plan of action." Dr. Alvarez, their lead physicist, stepped forward. "Captain, we've been working on modifying the transdimensional drives salvaged from Kronos. With some adjustments, we believe we can use them to navigate the fractured multiverses." Sullivan nodded, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. "Do it. Assemble a team of our best operatives and scientists. We're going to trace these entropy waves back to their source." Weeks of feverish preparation followed. Sullivan watched as his hand-picked crew outfitted their explorer vessel, the Quantum Horizon, with experimental shielding. The ship's hull gleamed with a network of crystalline lattices, designed to withstand the rigors of multiversal travel. As the final preparations were made, Sullivan addressed his team in the Quantum Horizon's briefing room. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. We'll be venturing into the unknown, facing dangers we can't even imagine. But the fate of all reality rests on our shoulders. We cannot fail. The Quantum Horizon's engines hummed to life, pulsing with transdimensional energy. Sullivan strapped himself into the command chair, his grip tight on the armrests. All stations, report in. Navigation ready, Captain. Engineering standing by. Temporal shielding at maximum. Sullivan took a deep breath. Initiate multiversal transit. The ship shuddered as reality itself seemed to twist around them. Crackling energy engulfed the vessel as they plunged into the void between universes. The crew fought waves of nausea as their perceptions warped, glimpsing impossible geometries and alien dimensions. Days blurred together as they navigated the cosmic labyrinth, following the faint trail of entropy waves. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a familiar solar system, but one barely recognizable. "By God!" Sullivan breathed, staring at the view screen. Before them lay a hellscape of molten rock and cosmic debris, Earth in its infancy, over 4 billion years in the past. Alarms blared as the sensors detected a massive energy spike. A tear in the fabric of subspace yawned open nearby, pulsing with chaotic temporal forces. "That's it," Dr. Chen called out, her voice filled with awe and terror. "The quantum scar left by Kennedy's arrival." Sullivan's mind focused as he assessed the situation. "Prep the hard suits and ready the transdimensional gateways. We're going in." The elite team donned their specialized gear, each suit a marvel of technology designed to withstand the impossible. Sullivan led the way as they stepped through the shimmering portal, leaving the relative safety of the Quantum Horizon behind. They materialized in a realm of pure chaos. Reality itself seemed to twist and warp around them, buffeting them with tides of temporal energy. Sullivan's voice crackled over the comlink. "Stay together! Push forward!" They pressed on through the maelstrom, their suits' systems straining against the onslaught. Ahead, a pulsing singularity spewed forth waves of distorted spacetime, the focal point of Kennedy's quantum signature. "Deploy the stabilizers," Sullivan ordered, his voice barely audible over the roar of warped reality. The team sprung into action, activating a network of multi-dimensional devices. Beams of exotic matter lanced out, gradually enveloping the singularity in a web of controlled energy. Hours stretched into days as they worked tirelessly, making microscopic adjustments to contain the cascading entropy. Sullivan lost all sense of time, his world narrowing to the readouts on his suit's display and the pulsing heart of the cosmic wound before them. Finally, after what felt like years of subjective time, the impossible happened. The singularity's violent energies calmed, contained within a shimmering multiversal stasis field. Exhausted beyond measure, Sullivan and his team stumbled back through the transdimensional gateway to the Quantum Horizon. As the ship prepared for the arduous journey home, Sullivan stared out at the now stabilized rift in subspace. They had done it. They had saved reality itself from unraveling. But as the Quantum Horizon slipped back into the depths of the multiverse, Sullivan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. New pathways had been opened, new possibilities unleashed. What challenges would they face in the cosmic frontiers that now lay before them? The Quantum Horizon burst through a shimmering veil of spacetime, its hull crackling with residual energy. Sullivan's eyes widened as he took in the view on the main screen. Their home solar system lay before them, yet it was fundamentally altered. Ghostly echoes of planets and moons overlapped, flickering in and out of existence. "What in God's name?" Sullivan breathed, his voice barely audible. Dr. Chen's fingers flew across her console. "Captain, I'm detecting massive space-time distortions throughout the system. It's as if multiple realities are bleeding into each other." Sullivan turned to his chief engineer. "Montoya, status report." Montoya shook his head, bewildered. "All systems nominal, sir. But these readings, they defy everything we know about physics." As the quantum horizon cautiously navigated the transformed solar system, the crew watched in awe as entire regions of space seemed to fold and unfold before their eyes. Planets phased in and out of existence, their orbits following impossible trajectories. "My God," Dr. Alvarez whispered, his face pale. "Kennedy's actions. They've rewritten the very fabric of our universe." Sullivan's fists tight as he processed the implications. "Set course for Earth. We need to assess the full extent of these changes." As they approached their homeworld, they encountered pockets of space where the laws of physics seemed to break down entirely. Light bent in impossible ways, and time itself appeared to flow backwards in localized bubbles. "Captain," the navigation officer called out, her voice tight with stress, "I'm detecting a massive anomaly dead ahead. It's like a tear in space itself." The view screen flickered, revealing a yawning chasm of pure energy. Tendrils of cosmic force lashed out, weaving new realities into existence before their eyes. Sullivan leaned forward, his mind racing. That tear, it's a gateway to entirely new dimensions, realms we never knew existed. Dr. Chen approached, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Captain, if we could harness this, the potential for exploration, for scientific advancement, and the potential for disaster," Sullivan finished grimly. "We're dealing with forces beyond our comprehension. One wrong move could unravel reality itself." Over the following weeks, Sullivan coordinated with what remained of Earth's government and their Mazarian allies. They dispatched probes and research vessels to map the new cosmic landscape, each expedition returning with data that shattered their understanding of the universe. During a high-level briefing, Sullivan addressed the assembled leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen, we stand at a crossroads. The actions we took to save our timeline have birthed a new cosmic order. We have a responsibility to explore these new frontiers, but we must proceed with utmost caution." Amid heated debates and frantic preparations, a message came in from a human survey team in a distant sector. Sullivan's blood ran cold as he read the report. "Assemble the council," he ordered, his voice grave. "We've made first contact." Hours later, Sullivan stood before a holographic display, presenting the survey team's findings to a stunned audience. Images of impossible structures floated before them, cities that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, technology that defied the laws of physics. "These artifacts," Sullivan explained, "exhibit a level of advancement far beyond anything we've ever encountered. The survey team believes they've discovered evidence of a trans-dimensional civilization." The room erupted in a cacophony of voices. Fear, excitement, and disbelief mingled as the implications sank in. "Order!" Sullivan called out, silencing the chaos. "I know this is overwhelming, but we must approach this situation with clear heads. I'm authorizing a diplomatic mission to attempt communication with these Dimensioneers." In the days that followed, Sullivan oversaw the preparation of a specialized team. They outfitted a ship with the most advanced communication and defensive systems available, drawing on both human and Mazarian technology. As the diplomatic vessel prepared to depart, Sullivan addressed the crew. "You're about to embark on the most important mission in human history. The beings you encounter may hold the key to understanding the true nature of our transformed universe. Be cautious, be respectful, but above all, be ready for anything." The ship vanished into a shimmering portal, leaving Sullivan to wait and wonder. What cosmic revelations awaited them in the depths of this new, uncharted reality? The diplomatic vessel vanished into the shimmering portal, leaving Sullivan and his team to confront an unprecedented challenge. Weeks of intense preparation followed as humanity and their Mazarian allies assembled an elite group for the Dimensioneers' trials. Sullivan stood before the chosen few, his eyes scanning their faces. Each member represented the pinnacle of human and Mazarian potential, scientists, soldiers, and visionaries united in purpose. Beside him stood Arana, a Mazarian physicist whose brilliance had propelled their understanding of temporal mechanics to new heights. "What we face defies comprehension," Sullivan addressed the group. "But our survival, the survival of all we know, depends on our success." Arana stepped forward, her iridescent skin shimmering under the harsh lights. The mathematics suggest realities beyond our current perception. We must be prepared to abandon everything we think we know. The team boarded a vessel unlike any before, a ship designed to traverse the boundaries between dimensions. As they activated the drive, reality itself seemed to fracture around them. Colors bled into impossible hues, and the very concept of space warped and twisted. They emerged into a realm that defied description. Fractals bloomed and withered in an instant. Geometric shapes folded in on themselves endlessly. Sullivan felt his mind straining to process the impossible vistas before him. "Stay focused," he barked into the comms. "Remember your training." The trials began without warning or explanation. One moment, Sullivan was standing on solid ground. The next, he found himself plummeting through an ever-shifting maze of crystalline structures. He reached out, his fingers brushing against surfaces that felt both ice-cold and burning hot simultaneously. Around him, he glimpsed his team facing their own chaotic challenges. A scientist grappled with equations that rewrote themselves as she solved them, each solution spawning new complexities. A hardened soldier faced off against opponents that existed in multiple states at once, requiring impossible reflexes and decision-making. Sullivan's world spun as he navigated through paradoxical spaces where up was down and forward was backward. His thoughts fragmented, each cognitive process spiraling off into infinite variations. "Hold on to yourselves," Arana's voice cut through the chaos. "Our identities are our anchors." Days blurred into subjective eternities. Sullivan watched in horror as team members succumbed to the mind-bending trials, their forms twisting into impossible shapes before vanishing from existence. Those who endured found their perceptions expanding beyond mortal limits. Sullivan felt his consciousness stretching across vast cosmic architectures, each thought reverberating through countless realities. In a moment of crystalline clarity, Sullivan and the survivors glimpsed the true nature of their existence, a single thread in an infinite tapestry of possibilities. They saw Edward Kennedy's journey not as a singular event, but as one of countless divergent paths, each birthing new universes of potential. The Dimensioneers revealed themselves not as beings, but as concepts, living embodiments of cosmic growth and change. Their purpose became clear: to cultivate the very fabric of reality itself, nurturing new dimensions and possibilities. Sullivan felt the weight of this revelation threatening to unravel his very being. He turned to Arana, seeing in her eyes the same cosmic awareness that now filled him. "We have a choice to make," he said, his voice echoing across planes of existence. Arana nodded, her form shimmering with newfound power. "To join them in their grand design or to return and guide our people." Sullivan closed his eyes, feeling the pull of infinite realities. He saw the struggles that had defined his life. The battles, the losses, the triumphs, all rendered insignificant in the face of cosmic truth. "I can't go back," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Not after seeing this." Arana placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch spanning universes. "I understand, but I must return. Our people need guidance in this new age." Sullivan nodded, feeling his last connections to his old self falling away. He embraced Arana, their consciousnesses briefly merging in a moment of shared understanding. As Arana prepared to return to their home dimension, Sullivan let go of his final tether to mortality. His being expanded, merging with the cosmic framework of the Dimensioneers. In that moment, he became everything and nothing, a living conduit of infinite probabilities. Arana watched as Sullivan's familiar form dissolved into pure energy, spreading across the multiversal lattice. She steeled herself for the journey home, knowing that the true challenges still lay ahead.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.